It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. With 2,000 plus attendees, 25 plus robots, and 60 plus exhibitors, FIRA USA is the best place in the world for meeting agricultural and ag robotics leaders and seeing the latest technology demonstrations. This unique 3-day event is being held in Salinas, California, September 19th to the 21st, 2023. Check out their new website at FIRA-USA.com. That's FIRA, FIRA-USA.com. Get registered today. Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. My guest today grew up riding a tractor at her grandfather's cherry and apple farm in eastern Washington state. She's been working in agriculture, farmer organizing, and advocacy since 2006. She holds a master's in sustainable food systems with a focus on farmer mental health, and today she serves with Farm Aid. Farm Aid's mission is to build a vibrant, family farm-centered system of agriculture in America. Farm Aid artists and board members like Willie Nelson, Neil Young, John Mellencamp, Dave Matthews, and Margot Price host an annual festival to raise funds to support Farm Aid's work with family farms and to inspire people to choose family farm food. Today, we're going to talk about a new initiative. Farm Aid and Migrant Clinicians Network have teamed up to reach Spanish language listeners with a Spanish-speaking hotline operator trained in mental health. Excellent initiative. From Southern Maine, I'd like to welcome Caitlin Arnold Stephano. Welcome, Caitlin, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
So first of all, tell me a bit about your own background.
Yeah, so I grew up in a farming family, but it skipped a generation. So both my grandparents were farmers in eastern Washington state. And right out of college, I decided I wanted to try farming. So went to work on a farm and for 12 years, didn't look back, worked on several farms for other farmers, managed a couple of my own farms, but eventually sort of hit a wall of not being able to afford to buy land and just not making enough money to support myself. So at that time, I went to work for the National Young Farmers Coalition, doing farmer organizing all over the country and advocacy. Went to graduate school, got my master's in sustainable food systems and focused on farmer mental health. I made that shift to farmer mental health after losing a close farmer friend to suicide in 2017. And in the process of writing my graduate school thesis, I interviewed some folks at Farm Aid and decided I wanted to work at Farm Aid someday. So now here I am. I manage the Farmer Hotline program at Farm Aid, and I've been with Farm Aid since October 2021.
Wow, amazing. And how did you start out on the West Coast and end up out on the East Coast?
Yeah. So I'm West Coast, born and raised. That's where I did most of my farming. But when I started the job with National Young Farmers Coalition, this was pre-COVID, and their office at the time was in the Hudson Valley in New York.
Oh, yeah.
So I moved for that job and then ended up sticking around. Now I live in Maine, and the Farm Aid office is in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, awesome. That makes sense. So tell me about Farm Aid and your role there. You said you're managing the hotline, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, so the hotline has actually been around since Farm Aid's beginnings in 1985. It's taken different iterations and looked differently depending on what was going on, who was there. When I came onto the program in 2021, we had received some funding from the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network to really expand our team. So we went from one hotline operator to a team of 4 through those funds. So we have 2 full-time operators and 2 part-time, and then myself and my colleague who runs the other part of our farmer services program. So it's really a team of 6 now. And then in October, we added our Spanish hotline. So our Spanish hotline operator as well. So it's really a team of 7. We've also been able to expand our hours through that funding. So, expanded our capacity, our hours, and then added our Spanish hotline all through the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network funding.
Great. And I know that you've had some ups and downs with farm bills of the past where, you're included and then you got some money. And now what are you projecting for this as this is another farm bill year?
Yep.
Do you have any hopes for that?
Yeah, I actually do feel really hopeful that FARSAN will be refunded. There is a marker bill that was just introduced to increase the funding actually from 10 million to 15 million. That has good support. And so I do feel really hopeful. I feel hopeful it's going to be refunded, maybe even at a higher amount. But of course, we won't know until, the fall, January. So we're in a little bit of a limbo time right now, which is challenging. But I do feel I have optimism that it will be refunded.
That's good. And one of your main focuses, obviously, is mental health. Farm and rural residents have higher rates of depression, substance abuse, suicide, partly caused by a life where they really feel like they have no control over influencing factors, which they like weather, costs, inputs, commodity prices. So what are some of the ways that Farm Aid helps these farmers?
Yeah, so we are a resource and referral line. So really what we're here to do is listen to farmers when they call. When farmers call us for a whole spectrum of reasons. We do get crisis calls and suicidal calls, but that's not the only calls that we get. Anything from financial crisis, legal assistance. We get a lot of calls after disaster. So after a climate disaster, we tend to see an uptick in calls. Navigating USDA and FSA programs. So what sort of our philosophy is, we're here to listen and support whatever the situation might be. And then we're going to find the best local, regional, and national resources for that farmer, depending on what their situation is. So we basically fine tune and individualize our responses to farmers, depending on where they are in the country, exactly the situation they're in. And often we get, people aren't calling us about one thing. Often they're calling us about, this happened, then this, then this, then this. This is where I'm at now. So we kind of have to look at the whole story of, this might not just be financial. It might also be having to do with family. It might be having to do with succession. It might be having to do with a health issue. We know all of those things can lead to farm stress. So we look at it very holistically and, have the approach of, okay, I'm going to give you several resources in different areas. because we know that one resource is not going to be a solution to a myriad of issues.
Yeah, for sure. And when does someone know they need help? Like when do they know that they should call? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, my advice is call us, even if you don't know if you should call us. No reason is too small to call us. For one, like we're here to listen. So even if you think, oh, I don't know if it's worth, me calling, does this count? It's no, like anything. I would say more often than not, people wait too long and call us when it's too late, especially in a legal situation or a foreclosure situation. If someone calls us and they say, I'm getting foreclosed on tomorrow, there's really nothing we can do at that point, and it's very sad. I think people think of Farm Aid as sort of a last resort, and I want to debunk that myth, because the sooner someone calls us when they're having issues with FSA or their loan or their bank or their land lease or whatever it is, the sooner you call us, the greater the likelihood that we can actually find you the help that you need.
Yeah, that's great advice. And seasonal and permanent migrants are very important to our food supply. As you well know, this initiative actually gives a lifeline to Spanish-speaking workers. And tell me about what are their problems? Like how can farm owners be more accommodating? I know there's a lot of times there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
So how can producers help?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on employment law for farms, but I think some of the biggest things we hear are around safety, personal safety, housing, food insecurity. And if our farm workers don't have stable housing, don't feel safe in their situations, and are not able to feed their families, what does that say to us about our food system? So I think producers could have a better understanding of what the life of a migrant worker or farm worker is like, providing proper instructions and protective equipment for pesticide use is a huge one. Providing stable, clean, safe housing, if housing is part of the deal. Making sure that farm workers feel like their families can be with them. Right. I think often we see farm workers split from their families because they can't all live in the same area because of whatever the job is. And that's, we know that is a huge strain on mental health and emotional health to be separated from your family. The language barrier, I wish producers all would learn Spanish so that they could, and there's lots of other languages besides Spanish, so that they could be better communicators. But if they can't do that, maybe hiring, having a manager that is bilingual, that can really talk to the farm workers and make sure things are going okay. And a lot of farm workers, if they're undocumented, don't feel safe to bring forward issues to their bosses. And so that's just a really unfortunate reality. And, I also want to share that Farm Aid Hotline is confidential, and that, any farm worker, undocumented or not, that calls us, they're not going to risk any sort of backlash or anything by calling us. So just want to make sure that is known also.
Oh, that's good. And this issue is very dear to my heart. My own dad had chronic depression most of his life, and he was a strong, hardworking, proud Man. And at one point, I actually had to trick him to get in my car so I could take him to the hospital because I didn't know if he'd be around tomorrow if I didn't. And so I did that, and he was very angry, but it was the right decision. So it's very difficult, especially for men, to say they need help, to even admit to themselves that they need help because they feel the stigma. So how do you think we're doing? Is the stigma leaving? Is it going away? How are we doing?
I have optimism that it is shifting. I feel like we're seeing more and more around mental health, farm stress, awareness, how to recognize the signs of farm stress or a mental health crisis in a neighbor or a friend or a family member. I really do think it's starting to change. However, farmers are a very unique lot. And oftentimes, there's a mindset of, I can deal with it. Yeah. And if I can't, then I am failing, meaning like a problem on the farm or a problem with my own emotional health. And that I don't know, I think that's going to be a slow shift. We often get family members calling on behalf of farmers because they're not calling for themselves.
Yeah, actually, that's what I did. For my dad, I called, I didn't know what to do. And they said, you need to get him to a hospital. And I said, he won't go with me. And they said, you need to get him in the car and you need to take him now. Yeah. Yeah. So if it wasn't for that line, I don't even remember what line it was, but I called. Yeah.
Which is so brave of you and so difficult to do on behalf of someone else, because you don't want to, you're not trying to create, you don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to be angry with you. Yeah. But sometimes it is necessary in order to get them the help that they need. Right. But yeah, I am hopeful the stigma is shifting. I just think there's a lot more in the national conversation about mental health and recognizing that it is okay to be stressed. It is okay to need to feel like you want some help. But with climate change, and we're just seeing so many more weather-related disasters, and they're so close together. That's another thing. It's farmers can't control the weather. Mm-hmm. They've never been able to, and it's not their fault. But with these disasters sort of like back to back to back, we're seeing that there's just not a lot of breathing room. And I think that is just going to continue to be a huge stressor.
Right. So if someone wants to help and assist, is there, where would they go to donate to Farm Aid?
Yeah, so you can donate online on our website. And, we do our festival every year. Mm-hmm. We're still doing our concerts. So that's every September. So if someone wants to, donate that way by coming to see some amazing music, those tickets go on sale in July, I believe.
And what's the lineup this year?
I don't know. I don't know yet.
Surprise.
I know very little. I'm sure there's more on the background that's happening, but I don't do a lot of the festival line of work stuff. But I think that will all start getting announced very soon. And all of the money we raise around $1 million every year from that festival. Wow. And then we basically turn around. So the festival's in September, October, November, we are working on our grant making process. And then we grant back out those funds to smaller organizations around the country that are working directly with farmers. Oh, and then a lot of those grantees end up becoming places that we are referring farmers to when they call us.
Very good. And what's the number and where can they find the line?
Yeah, so it's 1-800-FARM-AID, 1-800-327-6243. And our English hotline is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. And our Spanish hotline is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific time.
Perfect. And it's the same number and there's just a choice at the beginning?
Same number. And yeah, you'll hear a message in English and Spanish. And then if you choose Spanish, you'll go right to our Spanish hotline operator.
Wonderful. Very good. We'll include that in the show notes as well. I have one last question for you. Why do you serve? Why do you feel the need to serve? You're obviously a servant to this industry, and I love that. What's your greatest passion in all of this?
My greatest passion is to keep farmers farming if that's what they want to do.
Right.
We all, those of us that have experience with farming and our families or ourselves know that it is not just a job. It's your whole self, your whole life. And I think because I, as a young farmer, hit multiple barriers and finally just came to a point where I said, this isn't going to work for me, which was really devastating. I thought I would be farming until I decided to retire. So I think that's what drives me to help keep farmers farming if that is what they want to do. And then, of course, the farm stress aspect. I want to prevent farmer suicides. And I want to keep farmers feeling healthy in all their areas, physically, mentally, emotionally. So yeah, I think it's the combination of those two now. And I'm really glad that I've landed at Farm Aid and can be doing that so directly.
Amazing. And thank you for what you do.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thanks so much for joining me today. Great information, and we'll be sure to share it on all of our platforms. And awesome addition to what you do already.
Can I add one more thing? I just remembered.
Yeah, for sure.
Farmers can also fill out our online request for assistance form if they don't want to call the number.
Oh, okay.
That's at farmaid.org/resources, and they can fill out a form. It creates a case for them, and we'll get back to them just like we would if they called the hotline.
Oh, great. Awesome. That's awesome. And thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, as I said, the links are provided in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram channels. The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you shared it. And have a great day. Our newest podcast by North American Ag is called What Color is Your Tractor? The stories behind the ag brands you love and the ag brands you love to hate. Hosted by me, Chrissy Wozniak. We take a deep dive into the companies that have built modern agriculture. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Go to whatcolorisyourtractor.com. Available on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.